It is 3 a.m. and you are staring at the ceiling of your bedroom doing the math in your head for the 1,000th time because the numbers just do not add up anymore, no matter how hard you work or how much you sacrifice. You finally hit that legendary magic number of $100,000 a year, which was supposed to be the finish line of all your struggles and the beginning of your absolute freedom, but instead you feel more trapped than you did when you were earning $40,000. In the 1990s, this six-figure salary meant you were the undisputed king of your suburban neighborhood with a big house and 2 cars and a college fund for your kids. But in 2026, it has become the bare minimum cost of basic survival in a crumbling middle class. You did everything the system told you to do by getting the expensive degree and landing the corporate job and paying your taxes on time, yet you are still just one flat tire or one medical emergency away from a total financial heart attack that could destroy everything you have built. Welcome to the $100,000 poverty trap, where you are earning more than your parents ever dreamed of, but you are struggling to afford the same simple life they had. The government and the mainstream media keep telling you that inflation is under control and that the economy is booming, but every time you walk into a grocery store or look at your rent renewal, you know they are lying straight to your face. They use a manipulated consumer price index to tell you inflation is only 3 or 4%, while the reality at the checkout counter shows that your eggs and milk and bread cost 40% more than they did just a couple of years ago. The numbers on your paycheck might be growing slightly, but the actual purchasing power of those dollars is melting away like ice under a hot Vermont sun in the middle of spring. You are being hit by a silent and invisible tax that does not require an act of Congress and does not show up on your pay stub, but it steals your time and your energy just the same. This is economic gaslighting at its finest, where the elites tell you that you are doing great while they systematically devalue the currency you spend your entire life working to obtain. You see a notification pop up on your smartphone screen for a new high-tech gadget or a designer jacket, and your brain, which has been conditioned by billions of dollars of neuromarketing whispers that you worked 60 hours this week and you deserve to treat yourself. This is the dopamine trap designed by behavioral psychologists to make sure that every extra dollar you earn flows right back into the pockets of the corporations that own the system. They do not want you to be a millionaire or even financially stable, because a financially free person cannot be controlled or forced to work a job they hate for 40 years. They want you to be a high-earning debt slave who is perpetually hungry for the next status symbol, while your actual net worth stays at 0 or goes into the negative. Every buy button you click is another bar in the invisible cage they have built around your life to ensure you never have enough capital to truly walk away from the treadmill. Most people in America and the United Kingdom think that the $100 bill or the 50-pound note in their pocket is an actual asset, but they are fundamentally wrong about the nature of money. The dollar is no longer money in the way our ancestors understood it, because it is no longer backed by anything of tangible value like gold or silver, but is instead a debt contract. It is a piece of paper that represents a promise from a government that is $34 trillion in debt and has no intention of ever paying it back. Since 1971, when the final link to gold was broken, the dollar has become a tool of mass wealth redistribution from the poor and the middle class to the elite who sit at the top of the banking food chain. Every time the central bank prints another $1 trillion out of thin air, they are not creating wealth, but they are diluting the value of every dollar you have saved in your bank account. While you are busy working 60 hours a week and missing your children grow up just to get ahead, the Federal Reserve and the central banks are busy printing your hard work into digital oblivion. I call it the largest invisible heist in human history, and your savings account is the primary target of this sophisticated global robbery. In 1970, a single dollar could buy you a full steak dinner with all the sides, but today, that same dollar barely buys you the plastic wrapper on a processed snack at a gas station. The system isn't broken or failing. It is actually working exactly how it was designed by the financial architects who want to keep the masses in a state of perpetual struggle. They understand that as long as you are worried about paying your bills, you will never have the time or the mental energy to look up and see who is actually pulling the strings of the economy. The middle class in the West is no longer a sustainable lifestyle, but has been transformed into a permanent and mandatory monthly subscription service that you can never opt out of. You think you own your home, but you are actually just renting it from the bank for 30 years while paying twice the purchase price in interest. And if you stop paying property taxes, the government will take it away in a heartbeat. You do not own your modern car either because you are likely leasing it or paying off a high-interest loan that makes the dealership more money than the car itself. You are even renting your social status and your wardrobe from credit card companies at 24% interest rates that ensure you stay behind the curve forever. You have become a tenant in your own life, where every basic necessity is a line item on a corporate balance sheet, and your time is the product they are selling to their shareholders. Central banking and the fiat money system are the twin pillars of this modern-day feudalism, where the lords are the bankers and the serfs are the people who trade their limited hours for depreciating paper. When the gold standard was abandoned, it gave the elites the power to create money out of nothing, which allowed them to fund endless wars and massive bailouts for their friends, while the average citizen paid for it through the devaluation of their wages. This system creates a massive wage gap where productivity goes up every year, but real wages stay flat because the gains are captured by the people who own the assets and the printing presses. If you are still playing the game by the old rules of saving cash and hoping for a pension, you are essentially volunteering to be fleeced by a system that has no loyalty to you. The dollar is a melting ice cube, and if you keep holding it, you will eventually be left with nothing but a wet spot on the floor where your wealth used to be. Fractional reserve banking is the magic trick that allows banks to lend out money they do not actually have, which creates a massive bubble of artificial credit that eventually leads to a crash. Every time you take out a loan, the bank is not giving you the money of another depositor, but is creating that money instantly with a few keystrokes on a computer. This massive influx of fake money into the housing and stock markets is what drives prices up to levels that the average worker can no longer afford without taking on even more debt. It is a vicious cycle where the solution offered by the system is always more debt, which is the very thing that caused the problem in the first place. They have convinced the world that debt is a tool for growth, when in reality it is a shackle that keeps you dependent on the very institutions that are draining your life force. There is a profound disconnect between the productivity of the modern worker and the actual quality of life they are able to afford compared to 50 years ago. Despite all our technology and automation and efficiency, the average family now requires 2 full-time incomes just to afford the same basic house that a single high school graduate could buy in the 1960s. This is the dual income trap where families are working twice as hard, but are more fragile than ever because they have zero margin for error in their monthly budget. We have been sold a lie that this is progress, and that having more gadgets and streaming services makes us richer, while the core assets of life like land and housing and time become more expensive every day. The system has successfully commoditized every minute of your existence and turned your domestic life into a profit center for global conglomerates. Modern slavery does not require physical chains or iron bars, when you can use debt and the fear of poverty to keep people in line more effectively than any whip. If you owe the bank for your mortgage, and the car company for your SUV, and the credit card company for your vacation, you are not a free man regardless of what passport you hold. You are forced to show up to a job you might hate and follow orders from people you might despise because the alternative is losing the roof over your head. The elite understand that a man in debt is a man who is compliant and easy to manage because his primary focus is always on the next payment rather than on the pursuit of truth or liberty. They have built a digital prison where the walls are made of interest rates and the guards are the credit reporting agencies that track your every move. The educational system is the first stage of the trap, where young people are encouraged to take on tens of thousands of dollars in student loans before they even understand how a bank works. This ensures that the next generation enters the workforce already in a deep financial hole, which forces them to take the first corporate job they can find rather than pursuing their true passions or starting their own businesses. It is a brilliant way to stifle innovation and rebellion by making sure the youth are focused on loan repayment from the day they graduate. By the time they pay off the education debt, they are usually ready to take on a mortgage and a car loan, which completes the cycle of lifelong dependency. The system does not want entrepreneurs or critical thinkers. It wants efficient employees who are too burdened by debt to ever question the status quo. Status and luxury have become the modern religion, where people are willing to sacrifice their future security for the temporary feeling of superiority that comes from owning a brand name item. Corporations spend more on advertising than they do on research and development, because they know that if they can control your desires, They can control your bank account. They sell you a dream of a lifestyle that does not exist while they harvest your actual wealth through high interest payments and recurring fees. The true sign of wealth is not what you spend, but what you keep and how much of your time you actually own. But they have flipped this logic on its head. Most people are busy trying to look rich while they are actually getting poorer every day because they are trading their appreciating assets for depreciating toys. Shrinkflation and skimpflation are the two newest weapons in the corporate arsenal against your wallet, where they give you less product for the same price or use cheaper ingredients while keeping the premium labeling. You might not notice that your cereal box is 5% smaller or that your favorite soap now uses low-quality fillers, but over a year, this adds up to thousands of dollars stolen from your budget. It is a way for them to hide the true rate of inflation while maintaining their profit margins at your expense. These companies are not your friends, and they have no interest in your well-being because their only goal is to maximize shareholder value by extracting as much as possible from your pocket. If you are not paying attention to the fine print of every transaction, you are being bled dry by 1,000 small cuts. Technological unemployment and the rise of artificial intelligence represent the next massive threat to the wealth of the middle class as machines become capable of doing cognitive labor. While the elites will own the AI and the robots that do the work, the average employee will find their skills becoming obsolete and their bargaining power disappearing. This will lead to a massive concentration of wealth at the very top, while the rest of the world is pushed toward a universal basic income that will likely be tied to a social credit system. The window to build real tangible wealth is closing fast, and if you do not adapt by owning the means of production or hard assets, you will be left behind. The future economy will not reward hard work as much as it will reward the ownership of the systems that perform that work. The tax code is a masterpiece of social engineering designed to protect the wealth of the elite while placing the entire burden of running the state on the shoulders of the middle class. While billionaires use offshore accounts and complex trusts and legal loopholes to pay near zero in taxes, the average worker sees 30% of their paycheck disappear before it even hits their bank account. This is a system where you are taxed when you earn, and taxed when you spend, and taxed when you own, and taxed when you die. It is a relentless extraction of your labor that ensures you can never accumulate enough capital to truly compete with the people who write the laws. The game is rigged in favor of those who own the capital, while the people who trade their time for money are left to pick up the bill for everything. The dollar is not just a currency, but it is a global weapon used by the United States to maintain its hegemony and control the flow of resources across the entire planet. By forcing the world to trade in dollars, the U.S. is able to export its inflation to other countries and live beyond its means for decades. However, this system is starting to show deep cracks as other nations begin to realize that the dollar is a liability rather than an asset. As the rest of the world starts to move away from the dollar, the value of the currency will collapse back into the domestic U.S. economy, causing a hyperinflationary event that will wipe out the unprepared. You must understand that the dollar is a political tool, and when the politics change, the money will disappear into thin air. There is a massive wealth transfer coming as the baby boomer generation passes their assets down to a younger generation that has been hollowed out by debt and inflation. However, much of this wealth will be consumed by the healthcare industry and the government through inheritance taxes and end-of-life care costs. The system has already planned for this transfer and has built the mechanisms to catch that wealth before it ever reaches your hands. If you do not have a strategy to protect your family's legacy, it will be liquidated by the same institutions that have been draining you your entire life. You need to stop thinking in terms of months and years and start thinking in terms of generations if you want to survive the coming economic storm. The only way to win a rigged game is to stop playing it by their rules and start building your own exit strategy through the ownership of hard assets. This means moving your wealth out of the digital banking system and into things that cannot be printed or devalued by a central bank. Land and gold and silver and decentralized assets like Bitcoin are the few remaining lifeboats in a sinking fiat currency ocean. You must prioritize the ownership of your own time and the development of skills that cannot be automated or replaced by a machine. True freedom is the ability to say no to a system that demands your soul in exchange for a temporary sense of security. It is better to have a smaller life that you own completely than a large life that is owned by the bank. My name is John, and I have spent my life deconstructing the blueprints of the elite so that you do not have to live in the dark anymore. We are living through the final stages of a giant financial experiment that is reaching its inevitable conclusion, and the only question is whether you will be a victim or a survivor. The system wants you to stay distracted by the latest news and the latest trends so that you do not notice the walls closing in on your financial future. It is time to wake up and see the world for what it really is and take the first step toward reclaiming your sovereignty and your wealth. This is not just about money, but it is about your freedom and the future of your family in a world that is becoming increasingly hostile to the individual. Subscribe to this channel and join me as we deconstruct the matrix and build a blueprint for a life that is actually worth living.